Goals can be crucial to help investors stay motivated, especially in the face of uncertainty. But what about those times where you are totally motivated but feel aimless? Take a retirement goal, for example. This can often be a huge motivator, but can also feel murky. How much am I supposed to have? What's my magic number? What is it going to take for a retired couple age 65 to spend $7,500 a month in retirement? Well, in this video, I want to work through an example of thinking backwards, and we'll actually look at this from two different angles. First, what if we want to spend $7,500 a month but never actually reduce that amount? And second, what if we start with $7,500 a month in retirement, but that changes over the course of retirement and something known as the retirement spending smile? Hey everybody, I'm Curtis Crossland of Suttle Crossland Wealth Advisors. I help folks build more tax efficient retirements. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing we need to do is cover a couple key items, and then we'll set some assumptions. The first item is that this example is really only going to cover one path, but there are multiple paths to achieve $7,500 a month in retirement. Some folks will have continued business ownership, some will have rents and royalties, some will have pensions, etc. I'm not covering every one of those possibilities. Instead, I'm choosing to stick with the path that leans more towards the average. This would mean using Social Security, savings, and investments to take care of retirement expenses. The second is that this is just a simple case study. Personal factors and circumstances can be different for everybody. Anyone that's curious about their situation really should do their own analysis. Now, for the assumptions, again, we're looking at a married couple age 65. We're saying that they started retirement at the beginning of the year. We're going to say that they have a life expectancy of age 90. And we're saying again that they're going to be using a combination of Social Security plus savings and investments to afford retirement. They do not want to have to use their primary home in any way. And so the main goal really is to make it through retirement without running out of assets, without having to dip into or use any of the equity or ownership in their home. So here we are taking a look at our volunteers for the day. We've got Jesse and we've got Susan. They are both 65 and they both retired at the beginning of this year. And in trying to take this look at having $7,500 a month in retirement spending, we're actually going to come over here and see that we're starting out with essentially nothing. So looking at their assets, we see that there's nothing here in cash to start with, nothing in non-retirement, and then nothing in the retirement accounts for them. We'll say that they own their home free and clear, but from a planning perspective, we're going to say that they have absolutely no desire to use any of the equity in the home itself. They basically want to live there until they die and then have that pass on as a legacy. And next we'll come over here and take a look at their goals. And looking at their goals, we see that $7,500 a month in those planned expenses for retirement. And I might be blocking this just a bit, but over here on the initial spending strategy, we're going with inflation adjusted. And so effectively all that means is they want to spend $7,500 a month. They want that to increase with inflation over time, but there's not going to be a specific pullback on the spending like we're going to see with the retirement spending smile in just a bit here. And I also stress this in every review, but when we take a look at the addition of healthcare costs and long-term care costs, I feel like this is prudent. Now, it does actually increase the spending above $7,500 a month. And the whole point of this planning exercise in any capacity is to make sure that you don't outlive your money, or if you are on a path to do that, understand what type of adjustments might have to be made. So going into this, we're trying to idealize this and say, well, what exactly would get them to a point where they really just don't have to worry that much? And again, healthcare and long-term care, the odds of needing these are high enough that it has to be undeniable to planning. Now, something else that we'll do, we'll actually come over here and we're going to take a look at our inflation assumption. And you can see that we're going to go with a 2.5% inflation assumption for the next several decades. And as we said before, they plan to have Social Security, so we'll actually come back and we'll take a look at that. And at least in this example, we're going to go with full retirement age as kind of the baseline strategy for when they're going to take Social Security. And full retirement age is basically once they have earned 100% of their Social Security benefit. So that means they're not taking it early, and that means they're not delaying until 70. We can play around with that a bit. And we can see, at least for Jesse here, that at full retirement age, his monthly benefit amount is going to be $2,800. If we come over here to Susan, same deal. We see that for Susan, she's going to take it at full retirement age instead of 70. And then her full retirement age benefit monthly is going to be $2,200. Now, we're also going to come take a quick look at Social Security. I have been getting comments on this. Some people have opinions on when somebody should take it or not. It really is up to the individual. looking at an example, we can take it whenever. I have had people make comments that Social Security should be taken at different ages, or they don't understand maybe why it's being taken when it is. So let's actually just do a very quick breakdown. So in the current strategy, if we say full retirement age, for them, it's going to be close to age 67. So right now, what we're looking at is basically a chart that shows the optimal strategy versus the current strategy. What is the optimal strategy? Well, in a vacuum, the optimal strategy is for both of them to delay until 70. What that would do is give them the highest payout if they lived long enough. And that's the big question. Nobody knows exactly when they're going to pass away. But if they both live to be 90, if they both stay healthy, the idea is that at least in their example, they would have a little bit over $300,000 more if they both delayed until 70. Now, somebody might say, well, why don't we just have Jesse, who's got the higher benefit, take it at 70, and then we can have, Susan take it at full retirement age. That way there's a split. Well, fine, we can take a look at that. And so just to show, we're going to come back up here, back over to Social Security. We're going to say to Jesse, all right, you're going to take it at 70. And then when we come back over here and we take a look at the Social Security analysis again, here's what we see. So current strategy now reflects Jesse taking it at 70, Susan taking it at full retirement age. Again, in the optimal scenario, we still see that there's a little bit more, about 136,000 plus that would be paid out if both delayed till 70. But you can see that having Jesse delay till 70, Susan take it to full retirement age does narrow that gap. I'll very quickly set this back. We'll go back to full retirement age for both. And the reason that I want to do that is because back over here on Social Security, I want to take another quick look at something. And basically what I want to look at is some of this comparison on the cash flow. When would they break even? So at least in this example, full retirement age versus 70, the break even age would be age 81. So if, again, both live to 90, they'd be better off taking it 70, but we're going to stick with full retirement age for this example. So I just wanted to provide that quick breakdown. I've also done a video on the difference between taking it at 62 versus 70. I'll put a link that you can view if you want to check out that video next. So taking a look at the retirement scenario now, this is probably not going to come as a surprise, but if they have no other assets and only Social Security, and they want to spend a whole lot more than that Social Security monthly, they're pretty much at a 0% probability of success. Now we'll take a look at a couple quick metrics, but I do want to establish that at least again for this review, we're going to try to look at a minimum acceptable probability of success of 90%. Why 90%? Well, we could go with 85%. That seems to be a standard for certain planners. We're going to go with 90 because it's just a little bit more. And the idea of having a higher probability of success means you have a lower chance of having to make adjustment. In a perfect world, everybody would have 100%, but we're going to say 90% is going to be our minimum acceptable probability of success. So a couple interesting facts to look at here. If we actually look at the spending proposal for that plan of 90, $7,500 a month, plus the extra health, long-term care costs, the projected total retirement spending is about $4.8 million. So somebody might think, well, all right, I just need a $4.8 million portfolio and I'm good to go. Well, not technically, because the idea is that if you have a portfolio of lesser value and you keep that portfolio invested in some type of long-term diversified strategy, that portfolio can earn for you. You can use that compounding return to help pay for your lifestyle over time. And this way you don't have to just put $4.8 million, under the mattress or out in the backyard. You can invest that with the intent of living off of the earnings that it can provide. Now, you may still have to dip into it a little bit from time to time, but normally with a high probability outcome of success, as we've seen in previous videos, a lot of times that confidence interval is going to go up and you'll actually see a projected ending balance that's higher than what you start with. And so now would be a good time as well to maybe guess, what do you think it would take for them to start with, in terms of assets to meet a 90+% probability of success in this first look? Well, make that prediction now, because I'm going to come back here and we're going to start to load them up and see what's going to happen. So ideally, when you enter retirement, you really don't want to have nothing available that's liquid. Normally, you want to have somewhere between 12 and 18 months of cash set aside more if you have more concerns about volatile markets. At least in their circumstance, if they want to spend, let's say, $7,500 per month, that equates to $90,000 per year. And if we want to have, let's say, 12 months or a year of cash, we'll say that they have $90,000 in the bank currently. Now, I've done a lot of these. I'm just going to take a stab in the dark and say say that they have probably in the neighborhood of $1.5 million in investments to begin with. And for a lot of folks, they're going to build that in things like 401ks or work retirement plans, things where you're going to have assets that you can eventually roll over to IRA accounts. So we're going to say that the majority of what they have in terms of their invested net worth is going to be tied up within their IRA accounts. So we'll just make this very simple, at least to start with. We'll say that Jesse has $500,000 in his IRA. We'll say that Susan has the same, $500,000 in her IRA. And then in the non-retirement account, basically the taxable brokerage, we're going to go with $500,000 as well. And at least initially, what this means when we come back and look over here is that they do have a higher net worth, but they have essentially $1.5 million in investments and then $90,000 in cash. So let's come take a look at our retirement projection now. Whoa, look at that, 90%. Now, take note of a couple things. If we hit that minimum probability of success, that doesn't guarantee anything. Again, the idea is that a high probability of success means that you have a lower chance of having to adjust at some point. And so in this initial view where we're saying, let's spend that $7,500 a month, I don't want to lower that. I want that to stay $7,500. We'll change that up for inflation or index that for inflation over time. What do I need to have? Well, $1.5 million of investments plus $90,000 in cash has gotten us to that 90% probability of success right out of the gate. Notice as well, the median value on that Monte Carlo came out to 3.1 million in terms of terminal value, and that's higher than the 1.5 million. If we come over here and we take a look at some of the key factors, we do have a little bit of a higher withdrawal rate initially. That makes sense if they're not going to start Social Security until full retirement age. That's roughly 2 years where they'll have to live off of the cash, plus the investments. And then we do see the withdrawal rate actually fall off and be at a much more sustainable level. And then towards the end, we have that long-term care costs come in. If we take a look at how the assets build over time, not surprising, we do have the assets build up over time. We have them dip back down towards the end. And then when we look at that confidence, you do see that towards the later years, the dispersion grows a little bit more. Median value still looks very nice though, 3.1 million. And because the probability is 90% and not 100%, there still is a small or remote possibility that the assets run out if you have, extraordinarily bad markets for any length of time. Think of, that left tail risk. More of those black swan events. And then likewise, there's a probability that they could have even more than 3.1. Again, 3.1 is just the median on the probability outcome here. Now, just real quickly, what could change things? What if they wanted to maybe go with a higher probability of success, if they were willing to add or introduce any optimization or flexibility? Well, this one right here, since we looked at the Social Security before, let's go back and see optimal strategy, both taking at 70. What does that do? And we see that actually increases their probability of success. It slightly increases that median. Now, again, that's not a guarantee. They both have to live to 90. So if one passes away early, that's going to change the entire landscape of this. So I think it's pretty safe to say that just with the baseline, if we just go with the baseline assumptions like we had before, $1.5 million in the investments, 90,000 cash, that ended up getting them at 90% probability of success without having to make any other alterations or adjustments. Now, let's say they want to have or add in flexibility and say, well, let's go with that retirement smile. So what is the retirement smile? Well, the retirement smile says we're going to start out retirement with our target spending. So that's $7,500 per month. We're going to spend that for a while, but eventually we're going to cross all the bucket list items off. We're going to do all the travel. We're going to kind of spend on everything that we want. Spending is going to go down as we get a little bit older, more in probably around age 80 or so, 75, 80. And the idea is we've done it all. We don't have any debt. We're just living and enjoying life, but we're not spending as much anymore because we're not in those go-go years. But as we age, eventually we get to a point where we have a pickup in the medical expense, long-term care costs. So we can see those expenses start to elevate again. And this gives you, when you look at the spending over time, something that looks a little bit like a smile. High spending initially, lower towards the middle of retirement, then again towards the end, we see a pickup in the spending. So why does that make a difference? Well, if you have years where you can reduce the amount that you're going to spend, well, that's less pressure that comes in on the portfolio. So what could they get away with asset-wise? Well, let's come over here and we'll take a look. So just for fun, to keep it easy, we'll keep the cash the same. We're going to actually change the taxable amount. Let's lower it by $250,000. So now what we're saying is they have 1.25 million in investments, 90,000 in cash. We see their net worth now 1.99 million as opposed to the 2.2 number that we saw previously. When we come over here and we take a look at the retirement breakdown now, we actually get pretty close here. So 89%, not quite the 90. We still have a positive median value, 2.379 million. The look here is on the left because we are using the retirement spending smile on the left, but look what happens over here on the right. So on the right, that was the keep it static. Index it for inflation, but I'm not going to reduce those expenses ever. We have a 76%. That's a pretty big difference in the Monte Carlo. So a little bit of that spending flexibility, being able to say, hey, we think that we're going to have higher spending initially in retirement. We're going to have those go-go years. We're going to have the years where we pull back a little bit, and then we expect that increase towards the end. We can still achieve a nearly almost 90% probability of success and have $250,000 less investment. So why is that a big deal? Well, if you're trying to raise a family, if you have, let's say, high costs, associated with running your life up until retirement, if maybe you didn't get the biggest promotion in the world until you're, 62 years old, and now you have only a few years to catch up, there are all kind of reasons why folks may not be able to build to this magic number that's huge. They may have different priorities where they're trying to save for retirement, but they're also trying to raise and get a family launched out there. So knowing kind of what is necessary to get to that point, I think is a helpful exercise in helping folks that are maybe 5 years out from retirement or even younger, maybe in their 30s or 40s, try to start to think through, well, what do I need to build towards? In an example like this, sometimes working backwards is helpful. So if you say, well, I want to spend $7,500 a month in retirement. I want to take Social Security, at full retirement age. I want to. The idea is set the goals, take a look at an assessment and analysis, see what is it going to take to get to that point, and then you can start to build in steps to get there. Financial planning is a process. This is going to be something that you really need to look at periodically, at least once a year. You need to understand if there are going to be changes to the numbers. Our inflation assumption may not be valid in 5 years. It may not be valid now, but we're basing it off of historical numbers. So each year is going to be its own endeavor. And financial planning is never static. It's a lot like playing jazz. So if there are things that need to change, the idea is that you have the ability to do that. But there are so many different personal factors, so many different components that go into what somebody's goals are, what their time horizons are, what their health is, what their family dynamics are, that it's impossible to look at just one scenario and feel like, okay, well, this defines everybody. It's not going to do that. So these are fun to look at, and these are a really good, I think, introduction for some folks into what planning is going to look like. And if this entire time you kept thinking, well, hey, what does that look like for myself? My encouragement would be to put yourself in a position to be able to do some of this planning just so you know if you're on track, maybe you're ahead of track, maybe you're behind, and then determine what it is that you need to do to hit those goals and hit those retirement dreams that you have. Once more, I'm Curtis Crossland of Suttle, Crossland Wealth Advisors, and if you want to see how we help folks build a more tax-focused and efficient retirement, be sure to check us out at SuttleCrossland.com and subscribe for future videos.